We are thankful that you are spending your Sunday with us here at Eastgate Church. For those that don't know who I am, let me just take 1 minute and introduce myself. My name is Stephen. What's up? And I am the proud and tired dad of two perfectly calm and compliant children. Amen. And let me just say this, children are a blessing from the Lord. Children are a blessing from the Lord, and I think if I say it enough, I may actually believe it. Children are a blessing from the Lord. Amen. Well, along with my beautiful bride, who 13 years ago today, we stood at this altar and said, I do. And for those that don't realize this about marriage, the altar is not the finish line. It's the starting line. And I am thankful for 13 years where our love has grown. Yeah. And it's just the beginning of this amazing journey that God has for us. So 13 years today, we are married. My beautiful wife, Stephanie, we have the honor and privilege of pastoring this amazing, unbelievable, crazy awesome, life-giving, mind-blowing, crazy awesome, I don't know if I said that already, multicultural community that we call Eastgate Church. And one of the reasons I think that you picked such an amazing Sunday to be here is because we are in week 2 of our series, Inside Out. Because God does his best work from the inside out, right? And so over this series, we are going to be getting to know those little voices inside of our head. And we are going to learn what it means and what it looks like to be an emotionally healthy follower of Jesus. That's a good time to get excited. Yeah. We're going to learn what it looks like to be an emotionally healthy follower of Jesus. Do you know that emotions are not bad? In fact, God made us in his likeness and image, and he has emotions. He has healthy emotions, but having emotions is one of the things that makes us unique as people that were imagers of God. There are certain things that differentiate us from other species and other parts of creation that make us like God and not just another part of creation. Some of that is wearing clothes. You don't go to the Serengeti and find animals fully dressed. Now, we have kind of messed things up a little bit here in America because we don't understand the way God created creation, so we put clothes on our dogs. And it's a little weird. I know if anybody in here does that, if anybody has dogs or pets and you put clothes on them, you're not weird. The people out there that are not here that do it are weird. But we actually clothe ourselves, right? It's one of the things that makes us different. One of the other things, and I think maybe really that is unique and special about humanity, is that we are one of the only things in creation that tells stories. We're storytellers by nature. Whether we know it or not, and whether we intend to or not, we live our lives through stories. We understand the world through stories. We connect with history through stories. And storytelling is powerful. It is. In fact, if you could say that us as humanity have a superpower, that superpower would be storytelling. Hello? I guess I'm the only one interested in having a superpower. But it's been a mark of humanity throughout history is that we are people that tell stories. If you go back all the way to 2100 BC, they have the first recorded story in human history. It's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. And if you understand what was happening throughout time, we have gone from stone tablets 2 podcasts, but we're still telling stories. Did you know that 1/3 of Jesus' recorded teachings are story? The Gospel of Mark tells us that anytime there was a crowd, he taught in parables, in stories. Which means when he got alone with his disciples, it says that he explained things more specifically and clearer. But whenever he was standing before a crowd, he chose to use stories as his main method of teaching. Because he understood the power of a story. He understood the power of storytelling. Listen to this. Stories are the way that you and I, that humans, make sense of the world we find ourselves in. It's a powerful tool that shapes society, connects individuals, and cultivates shared meaning across generations. Stories are important. Stories are powerful. So if you don't mind, let me take a minute today and share with you some true stories. Is that okay? She grew up in a house where her basic needs were ignored. She can never get the attention she desired or deserved. She grew up believing the narrative that she was unworthy of love, while at the same time desperate for the attention she never got at home. She has gone from broken relationship to broken relationship, person to person, searching in all the wrong places for someone to meet that innate need of love, attention, and affection. He began drinking at the age of 12. Had 2 DUIs before he hit 20. He found Jesus almost 2 decades ago, but over the last 5 years, it seems like the jack started to flow again. Most evenings after everybody else goes to sleep, he finds himself somewhere secret to drink alone, not knowing any other way to numb the pain of his past. His family is falling apart. And there's the issue of his job. How and what would happen if he admitted and owned to the congregation that he has been pastoring for the last 15 years that he can't practice what he preaches? And would they give him the same grace he extended to them so many times? She was abused in secret. She survived, but she couldn't be silent about it any longer. It felt like every time she closed her eyes, she was reliving the trauma over and over and over and over again. But what happened when she spoke up was more painful than the abuse itself. Because the people that were supposed to protect and defend her dismissed and blamed her. Now, publicly, she lets everybody walk all over her. And privately, she harms herself, believing that she has been the problem all along. The first 7 years of his life seemed perfect, until his family's private problems began to play out very publicly. They were a family that helped everybody else but could not help themselves. Their family was being torn apart and destroyed, but not only that, their home, their place of safety was taken from them. Everything that was supposed to be sacred, safe, and secure was lost. He believes that he could never be happy again because he doesn't deserve it. These are true stories. These are stories of shame. The last one is mine. Different screenplays emerging from our family of origin, life experiences, failures, mistake, and abuse, each one with its own particular sorrows and defeats. Now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you earn a 2-comma salary or make minimum wage. Doesn't matter if you're single, married, or divorced. It doesn't matter if you are depressed, anxious, angry, happy, sad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter what family you came from. It doesn't matter what community you are a part of. It doesn't matter what nation of origin you are from. It doesn't matter what organization you work for. It only requires that you have a pulse to be infected and affected by this phenomenon that we call shame. I grew up in a Sicilian household. And so shame was the language of motivation. I get shame. I know shame. Shame is in me. That's the way that we were raised. Hey, do you know what their families does? You know how good their kids are? You know what grades they're getting? Shame was the motivation, the language of motivation. We weaponized shame in the Iannuccilli house. But I want us to understand this, that shame is a debilitating feeling of worthlessness and self-loathing. And today may be the most important message you have ever heard, because shame has the capacity to be the most dangerous voice that lives inside of your head. Are you guys with me? I want to say it again. Shame has the capacity to be the most dangerous and influential voice in your head. And part of the power of shame is its elusiveness. And what I'm saying is that you don't always realize that it's shame that you're fighting. Because shame manifests itself oftentimes as anxiety, as an addiction. And we try to overcome our anxiety, we try to overcome our addiction, and we don't realize that the issue is really shame. We battle jealousy and competition, and we wonder, why can't I stop being jealous? Why can't I stop comparing and competing with others? And the reason is that we're fighting the wrong battle. It's not competitiveness that I need to fight with. It's the sense and the feeling inside of me that I am not enough. That causes me to look at other people and wonder why I'm not as good as them. I think it's interesting in the movie Inside Out, they don't call shame shame. They call it embarrassment. They call it embarrassment. You can call it embarrassment, you can call it dishonor, you can call it disgrace, you can call it humiliation. I'm having problems with words today. I'm a little ashamed. I'm working on it. But you can use any other title that you want, but we have to learn to recognize that shame is the root of all these issues. Shame is the problem. And until you learn to name it, you cannot overcome it. Can I say it again? Until you learn to name it, you can't overcome it. So let me ask you this question. What is your shame story? What is your shame story? Do you even know it? And if you do, does anybody else? Does anybody else but you really know your story? Because we all have one. In fact, it only takes 3 seconds for an experience to become embedded in our brain. Shame only takes 3 seconds to become embedded in your brain, and then once it is, it becomes the lens and the frame that we see our entire life through. Everything that happens in our life, we see through the lens of shame. And shame is telling you a story. It is. Shame becomes the narrator of your life. I have to admit, for too many days, for too many years, for too many seasons, I have allowed shame to narrate my life. And in every situation, in every circumstance, what I hear is you are not enough. That there's something wrong with you. You're bad, you don't matter, nobody cares, nobody loves you, you'll never be accepted, you'll never be enough. Has anybody else ever had shame narrate your life? Shame is trying to tell you a story, and the story is that you are not enough, that there is something fundamentally wrong with you. Shame is actually the opposite of joy. We're going to talk about joy in a few weeks. But we've learned already that the experience of joy is felt when you look into somebody's face that's happy to see you. Shame is the opposite of joy, because shame is looking in somebody's face that doesn't want to be around you. That's the experience of shame. And when we see that face of somebody that doesn't want to be around us, it's somebody that wants to walk away from you. And it constantly is telling you there's something wrong with you. I'm not thin enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not enough to be a father. I'm not enough to be a friend. I'm not enough to be a leader. I'm not enough to keep this job. I'm not enough to be in a relationship. Somebody lied to us somewhere along the way, and they taught us that if we would just change the way that we think, we could overcome shame in our life. If we could replace that negative thinking and change our thought life, then we can overcome the narrative of shame. But the reality is that shame is much more than a thought. Shame is a felt experience. So what I'm saying is that it's not just a narrative and it's not just a story that says you're not enough. It's a feeling in the core of your soul that you know that you're not enough. It's the feeling of not measuring up. It's the feeling of being not lovable. It's the feeling of being worthless that you feel deep down inside of you. It's not just a thought. And you can't overcome that feeling by just changing the way you think. Here's what toxic shame is. You ready? Toxic shame is the spirit of condemnation that is attached to the voice that speaks with a tone of condescension. Let me give that to you again, all right? You ready? Write it down. Toxic shame is the spirit of condemnation, the felt feeling of being condemned, attached to the voice that speaks with a tone of condescension. And what's amazing and what's dangerous and what we need to really be on guard for is that as long as shame, toxic shame, is framing our life, narrating our life, telling us a certain story, we can even hear God's words condemning and condescending. I don't know if I'm in the right room today. Remember when Peter got out of the boat in the storm and was literally walking on water? Anybody remember what actually happened? There's actually been two people that walked on water, Jesus and Peter. Peter, somewhere along the line, got nervous and he began to sink, and Jesus rescued him. They get back in the boat, and Jesus says, Peter, where was your faith? And those of us that read that through the lens of shame hear Jesus telling Peter, you are a loser. Why didn't you believe? You are worthless. You are no good, Peter. And it kind of feels like that sometimes because I understand that voice. I understand the voice of shame. I understand the voice of condemnation. As a father, I will walk into a room and see a disaster that my kids made, but they're not there anymore. And so I'll say, Stephen, Elia, get your butts in this room right now. You are in trouble. And that's the voice we hear when Jesus speaks things to us, when we frame life through the lens of shame and condemnation and condescension. I believe that Jesus was encouraging Peter. I do. I believe that he was saying, Peter, you were doing amazing. Why did you start to doubt? You almost had it. Hello? He wasn't motivating him with shame. Be better next time. He was saying, Peter, you had it. And then you took your eyes off of me. Next time you got this, yeah. But if we're not careful, we begin to hear God's word with the wrong tone. Because we're allowing shame to narrate our life. We're allowing shame to tell us a story about God that isn't true. Even when we go all the way back to the garden, we know Adam and Eve failed and they sinned, and then they ran away from God and they hid. And God showed up in the exact same place they had always been. And I want you to see what God says to them, Genesis 3:9. This says, but the Lord called to the man and said to him, where are you? Now there are two different ways we can hear that. We can hear it like the angry father. Get your butt back here right now and clean up this mess. Or we can hear it as, I want to be with you. Where did you go? Come back home. I don't think God lost track of Adam. I don't believe that he is geographically challenged in any way. I believe that he knew exactly where Adam had gone. So then why did he ask a question like that, where are you? Well, what I want to propose to us this morning is that God is more interested and invested in the internal location of your soul than the external condition of where you are right now. He didn't lose Adam. Adam lost himself. Can I say it again? He didn't lose Adam. Adam lost himself, because toxic shame will cause you to lose who you are. It'll cause you to lose your identity because it's telling you a different story about yourself. Well, we're going to learn about this more in a moment, but shame itself is not inherently evil. God created man perfectly and upright, but with the capacity to experience shame. Are you guys with me? This is going to be good. So shame itself is not evil. He's given perfect humanity the capacity to experience shame. And we know, though, that after Adam and Eve failed and fell, they experienced shame. Right? But what I want to say, and I want to show you this morning, that not only was shame the result of sin, but it was also the cause of sin. In fact, I may be so bold as to say this morning that the root of all sin is shame. Are you ready? Here is the snake beginning a conversation with Eve. Notice what he says. God doesn't want you to eat from the tree. He's holding something from you. He's keeping this thing from you. You got that? What was he doing? He was shaming her. Oh, he doesn't tell you everything. You must not be that important to him. Turns out, Eve, you're not enough in God's eyes, because if you were enough, he would have shared everything with you. He's keeping this thing from you, and it created toxic shame in Eve so that she overcompensated and said, I'll prove that I'm enough. So she ate the forbidden fruit, fell, and felt shame. So shame is both the cause and result of sin. Maybe we would sin less in our life if we had less toxic shame in our life. Maybe if we learn to name the things that are in our life, to name the struggles what they really are. I don't know who I'm preaching to today. Evil corrupts shame and weaponizes it against us. And this is how shame grows and multiplies and roots itself so deeply in our life, because shame produces shameful behavior, which reinforces our shame. Shame produces shameful behavior, which reinforces the shame. And so we go from shame to failure to sin to shame to failure and sin, and we just grow. It's like a snowball effect. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. So those 3 seconds where shame became embedded in our head has now grown into a whole story about who we are through the lens of shame. And everything that happens and everything that we do and every time we don't get what we want and every time somebody hurts us and every time we fail, it's reinforcing this idea that there is something wrong with us and we should be ashamed of ourselves. So toxic shame causes you to lose yourself. It causes you to lose confidence in the person that God created you to be. I can't be that person because, look. It seems like all the promises of God are always out of reach. His goodness, His mercy, His blessing, His presence, His favor. It's elusive because I'm not enough for it. And our response is the response of Adam. It's to hide. It's to hide in our shame. Shame causes you to hide. To hide from others, but also to hide from ourselves. Have you ever not been able to be alone with yourself? Somebody that's living a life narrated by shame is somebody that has a hard time sleeping at night. Because when all the noise is gone and all the people are gone, you're left with just you. And so how do we hide? We hide from ourselves by being busy. We hide from ourselves in our accomplishments, in achieving tasks, in habits and addictions. We hide from ourselves in devices. We hide from ourselves through relationships. Sometimes we hide from ourselves in worship. Isn't that what Saul did? Saul couldn't deal with himself, but whenever David was around worshiping, it soothed him, but it didn't fix him. He felt good in the moment, but it wasn't healing what hurt him. That's why so many of us use Sunday like a drug. We feel bad about ourselves throughout the whole week. We feel bad and we hear this narrative, but Sunday when we're in the midst of worship and we're hearing the word, it soothes us, but it doesn't heal us. Because we never get to the root of the problem. We never get to the root of the issue of why we feel the way that we do. So some of you came to church this morning thinking that you were going to hide from yourself here. All other secrecy is an extension of shame. We hide from our family. We hide from our spouses, our neighbors. We hide from the person sitting next to us because we really believe they ever saw the real us. If they ever heard our shame story, they would never love us. They would never stay. They would never accept us. I got news for you if you didn't realize it yet. You can't hide yourself here this morning. But I've got good news for you. Someone's like, about time. It's finally, I'm ready for some good news. I've got good news for you today. That it is this, the story that shame is telling you is not your story. Shame has been lying to you. The narrative that it has created around your life is not the story that you are living in. One of the reasons we gather on Sundays, one of the reasons that we come together in link groups and CR and young adults and youth and Bible study, one of the reasons we gather is to be reminded of the story that we are a part of. And it's not the shame story. Your story is the story that we are all living in. It is the story of the God who created the universe with joy and intention. The story of a God who longs to know and be known by us. Our story is the story of a God who became man, who lived a perfect life, who was betrayed and suffered and died. But in this story, the grave could not hold him, and death could not contain him. And in 3 days, he rose again. And today, he is sitting at the right hand of the Father, ruling, reigning, forever making intercession for us. That's the story that we are a part of. The story of shame tells us that God is running away from us. The story that we are a part of proves that God is pursuing us. The story of shame is that everybody will leave you if they know who you really are. The story that we are really a part of says the one that knows you most is the one that loves you best. Our story is that we are living on the right side of redemption. So shame is not your story. Grace is your story. Love is your story. Redemption is your story. Freedom is your story. If we read what Isaiah says, our story is that he is going to give us double for our shame. I don't know how that works. I don't really care, but it's in his word. For your shame, I will give you double. That's my story. That's your story. You guys aren't all that excited. Your story is that what the enemy meant for evil, he meant it for good. Your story is that God found you. He found me in our sin and our shame, and he rescued us. When everybody else ran away from us, when everybody else said there's nothing good that can come from them, just leave them alone, there's no hope, he ran into the fire and he pulled us out. That's your story. That's our story. Our story is that he has good plans for you, that your past can be used for his glory. His story is that the most important voice in the universe loves you, accepts you, affirms you, knows you, sees you, and will never leave you. So I am not ashamed of the gospel, because that's my story. That's your story. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I'm not ashamed of where I've come from. I'm not ashamed of what's happened to me, because it's not a story that ends in defeat and discouragement and abandonment. My story ends with victory and life and joy and peace and healing and redemption. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And if that's the story that we're living in, then shame has to be seen through the lens of his story. See, toxic shame is meant for evil to disrupt and distort the story that God is trying to tell. I'm going to try it again. Toxic shame is meant for evil to disrupt and distort the story that God is trying to tell. It's so good. Shame is trying to disrupt, distort, and mess with the story that God is trying to tell through your life. But what if shame, healthy shame, was meant to serve a positive purpose in the story he's telling through your life? Now, I know this is hard for some of us. I know it's just like one of those things that it kind of hurts to hear that there is a such thing as healthy shame. I'm 41 years now. I've grown up in the church, and I have never in my whole life ever heard shame framed in a positive way. It was always, you got to get rid of shame. Shame is negative. Shame is associated with sin. There is no such thing as healthy shame, but what if there is? What if toxic shame causes you to lose yourself, but healthy shame causes you to find yourself? I'm here to tell you this morning, and maybe I'm the first person that has ever told you this, that not only does healthy shame exist, but healthy shame is also necessary for human, emotional, and spiritual development. Healthy shame is real because as followers of Jesus, there are things we should be ashamed of. If we steal something, we should feel shame. If we cheat on our spouse, we should feel shame. If we are gossiping and talking badly about somebody that Jesus loved and shed his blood for, we should be ashamed. If we have hate in our heart for somebody that he's called us to love, we should feel shame. Because healthy shame, listen, healthy shame serves as a moral compass, helping us to recognize when we've done something out of the character of who God created us to be. And I want Eastgate to be a place where we employ healthy shame. Listen, not toxic shame, healthy shame. We need to normalize healthy shame. When somebody comes to gossip, we need to not let them be comfortable in sharing gossip with us. We need to say, that's not who you are. That's not what we do. Come on. When I correct my kids, I've learned to do it in a healthy way. Instead of saying, you're bad, you did this wrong, why are you being such a bad kid? I let them know, that's not what we do. That's not who you are. It's time to start being Elliot again. It's time to, where's my Stevie? I want you to be Stevie again. Whatever you're doing and however you're acting out of character. Remember who you are. This is how we employ healthy shame. Remember who you are. Remember who you belong to, because when you know who you are, you'll know what to do in every situation you find yourself in. Like when you go to Target and they forget to ring up the gum, you remember who you are. Don't walk out, I'm a child of the King, I just got blessed with free gum. Can I make a confession real fast? I feel like I need to. There's a car wash that I go to that they give you this card and a coupon, and every time you get a full service wash, it's $5 off or 5% off or whatever the 5 is that they give you, and they just put a little code into the machine that says 5 off. And the last time that I went, I had my card and there was nobody there to help me, and so I just said, I'll do it myself. And I accidentally put 50 off, and I got half off of my car wash. So I know the secret. Anytime I want, I can get half off of the car wash. But yeah, you don't know which car wash it is, though. But I didn't realize until like we were leaving that I just ripped off the car wash. And I had a choice. I could be like, yeah, thank God. Or I can go back and say, hey, I did this accidentally. Here. If it wasn't for shame, I would have kept driving. Healthy shame. Healthy shame. That's not who you are. Nobody would go to hell for leaving the car wash and not paying. But that's not who I am. That's not who you are. That's not who we are. We are followers of Jesus. We love, we forgive, we do the right thing even when it costs us everything. Healthy shame helps you find yourself because it's a signal that informs you you are acting out of character. You are falling short of the person that God created you to be. It says, I love you, but that's not how we act. Without healthy shame, there's nothing pushing character change in our life. This is super cool. Do you know that the brain will not correct itself until it experiences pain in that situation? So as long as you're getting away with it, your brain will never correct itself. But as soon as there is pain associated with that event or that action, your brain says, oh, we got to fix this. Do you know that even healthy shame hurts? But you know that Proverbs says that faithful and trustworthy are the wounds of a friend. That sounds to me like the people that really love us and care about us are not afraid to employ healthy shame to make us feel pain in a moment so that we can correct and change our course. This is also one of the reasons that people that are stuck in the narrative and the story that shame is telling them, toxic shame, they are uncorrectable. A lot of times in church we've missed it. We said, oh, they're rebellious. They're not rebellious, they're just full of shame. They don't respect authority. No, they do. They're just full of shame. They're just full of shame because you could be saying the right thing and saying, hey, this is the way that we do it, but all they hear is, I'm not enough. All they hear is, I'm unlovable, and it's reinforcing the narrative that shame is trying to tell them, that they're not good enough or they're not lovable, so they can't be corrected because all they hear is, I'm not enough. And if if what the person is saying is right, then it means that they really are everything that shame is telling them. So I can't be wrong. So I'm uncorrectable. Toxic shame pushes you away. Healthy shame corrects and invites you back to your identity and relationship. The cure for shame is found in his presence. A God that even if we make our bed in hell, will never leave. A God that is with us, a God that is for us, a God that changes the story that shame tries to tell us. Jesus says to the woman caught in adultery, where are those that condemn you? They all left, but I'm here. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere because I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to remind you who you are. Go sin no more. I hope somebody's hearing what I have to say today. The goal is that we would be redeemed from shame. And I find it amazing that the way that we were created in the garden, the Bible tells us that Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed. What if the goal, metaphorically, what if the goal was to be people that were naked and unashamed? People that were fully exposed and fully known, but still fully loved and accepted. Think about that. Think about that. To be fully known and fully accepted and fully loved while being fully exposed. Naked and unashamed. How would your life be different if you lived it naked and unashamed? Metaphorically. How would your life be different? How would your relationships be different? How would your mood be different? How would your faith be different if we really lived naked and unashamed? What if we allowed healthy shame to have its way in our life? Not only would we find ourselves, but we would find him. Because I want to say this, and we're going to land the plane this morning. Healthy shame leads us to Jesus. Healthy shame leads us to Jesus. It lets us know I'm wrong and I need to be fixed. I need to be corrected. But it also is the realization that I can't correct myself. I can't will myself or work myself to the destination and the place that God is calling me to be. So I need to find something or someone bigger than me. That's why Galatians 3:24 says the law was our tutor that leads us or brings us to Christ. The law is our tutor that leads us to Christ, which means I fail. I don't live up to the law. It's impossible for me to live up to the law. And so I feel shame about it. And the only way to overcome this shame is to find the one that can heal me. I have to find the one that has a different story than what shame tells me. So here's the solution. You ready? You're not going to like it. Because the way that we overcome shame is to do the very thing that shame convinces us is the most dangerous, threatening act we can commit. And that is being humble, honest, open, and transparent. Exposure is the very thing required to overcome shame. And it is also the very thing that shame is screaming, you better not do. Let's keep our head in the right place. But the first thing that I need to do is I need to expose myself to him. He knows anyway. And then I need to expose myself to others. Not everybody. But find somebody that you can be fully exposed, naked, and unashamed with. Somebody that's not going to walk away condemn you and condescend to you, but somebody that will say, I'm with you. I'm going to sit with you in your shame, and I'm going to remind you of who you are. So as we stand to our feet this morning, I want to ask you a question. It's the same question that God asked Adam. Where are you? Where's the real you? Was it lost in that trauma from when you were 5? Where's the real you? Has it been hiding for the last 20 years? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? The you that God created you to be. Where are you? Is it buried under the narrative of shame? Where are you? Is it using life and achievements and busyness and bank accounts to mask and hide the story that shame has been telling you? Where are you? Here's where we are. Here in the presence of the Lord, where the lost get found. Where the creator of the universe invites you into his story. Where we encounter his mercy, his grace, his love, his acceptance, his forgiveness. Here in the presence of the Lord is where we come alive again. It's where we're reminded of who we are and whose we are. All those things that shame wants to bring into our identity, here is where we remember that we are sons and daughters of God. Here is where we remember that we've been adopted into the family. Here is where we remember that the old things have passed away and all things have become new again. Here is where we are reminded that his love has a better word over our life. Where are you? Where are you?